So last week, let's start. So last week, we touched on company analysis. And under company analysis, we are saying that in order for us to be able to understand the company, we have to first review the past performance of that company. Vis-a-vis the present position of that company. So what has the company been doing and where is the company now? In order for you to be able to look at where the company is going to be in the future. But one very critical aspect when we are analyzing a company is to understand the company's industry and competitive advantage. And in order for you to understand the company's competitive advantage, you need to understand or identify the industry that the company was existing. Because that will also determine the company's profitability, revenue. So a typical example is, I always use this for a simple analogy. Imagine this whole road from beginning of the road, from the beginning of Allen, all the way down to the back. There's only one person that is selling drink and gala and biscuit and all those things. Yeah? What do you think is going to happen? Everybody on this street is only that malam that will be going to, Abi. That malam has monopoly on this street. Do you agree? Because he's the only one that is selling drink and gala. If malam comes the next day and tells you guys, I'm sorry, I cannot sell drink again for 200 naira. I want to start selling drink now for 300 naira because of what? Energy cost. The cost of me to make this drink cool has increased because I'm in band A. The guy has monopoly. You can determine the market. Now imagine after 3 months, somebody gets upset and says, you know what? Me too, I want to open shop on that street. What do you think the first thing that Malam will do? The Malam might even burn down the person's shop because of what? He doesn't want to compete. But if he's not a wicked person, he will allow the person to open a shop and they will start what? Competing on prices. Now, in terms of Gala and Pepsi selling on this street, an industry has been formed. So when two companies exist to provide the same services, to offer the same products, then they have formed an industry. What happens? The man that used to sell 10 bottles of drink before in a day will start selling probably only 2 or 3, depending on his price. Because the moment he sells this drink for 300 naira and somebody knows that I can walk down the street and buy the same drink for 250 naira, what will happen? Everybody will go there. They will not go to Malam again. So what will Malam start doing? Malam will start finding out what that other person is doing so that he can decide on his own price. So that's the whole essence of what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to say is your competition, your existence within that industry has a very significant impact on your on your revenue. And in order for you to be able to forecast a company, you have to be able to forecast the company's revenue growth. Revenue growth is the most important thing. If revenue is not growing, then there's a problem for a business. And you have to identify why is that revenue not growing. Is it because it's losing market share? Is it because somebody has created a product that is an alternative to his own product? So nobody is buying his product again. Everybody's now buying. Imagine if you can have 24 hours light in Nigeria. Imagine. Have you ever thought about that? What do you think will happen to people that sell generator? Even people that are selling solar and inverter, they will not exist again. Because we have 24 hours light. The only people that will not be buying solar and inverter are people that they feel that the price of electricity is too expensive. So they're using solar and inverter to what? To moderate their what? Their electricity consumption. Otherwise, these ones are all gone. That is why we need to do what? We need to do industry analysis. Understand how a company exists within its industry. Yeah? Okay. So, what are the uses of industry analysis? Uses of industry analysis. Beyond the fact that what, like I said, beyond the fact that this affects your revenue. Yeah. Beyond the fact that this affects your revenue, it also helps to improve your forecast. If I know your market share, I know your competitive advantage, I know what you can do within the industry, I can technically be able to forecast where you'll be next year. That AC. They blow you anyhow. They blow you anyhow, and they see the way they do for your face. So you're getting my point. It helps you to because what we're trying to do now is we're trying to forecast the company. That's the objective. And in order for us to forecast, we must be able to bring in all these variables. Consider the variables that can affect your forecast. And the critical angle of forecast is what? Is revenue. Another reason for you to do industry analysis is for you to identify investment opportunities. If an industry is growing, what will happen to the players within that industry? They will also grow. They will also grow. It's just basic. If an industry is growing, the people in that industry will also grow. And for you, what you are looking out for as regards investment opportunities is when you identify what? That growth. Then, if an industry is growing, your understanding of the industry will help you identify those companies that are taking the most advantage of that what? Industry growth. Yeah. Also, industry, so those are like the benefits. Yeah. So industry and competitive analysis steps. So the curriculum is providing us with the steps that we should carry out when we want to conduct an industry and competitive analysis. So one is you define the industry. You define the industry. You can define the industry by using third-party industry classification schemes. Requires judgment on similar and substitute product, multidivisional companies and geography. Can I ask you a question? Are you ready for it? You're ready for it? What kind of company would you call and the company just ran out of my head now? What kind of company would you, yes, let me use this one. What kind of company will you call Tesla? What is Tesla? What industry? If you meet Elon Musk, he'll tell you he's not automobile. He's not automatic. He's not automatic. He'll tell you that he's tech. It's a tech company that is providing automobile services. So you see companies like that. The company I wanted to give you before was UAC. But UAC now they've shared off a lot of their excesses. But back in the days, you can't tell us what UAC is. UAC is into food. UAC is into quick service restaurants. UAC is into real estate. Abi, I lie. Real estate was into real estate. UAC was into plenty things. That's what you now see part of the things that we're talking about, you have to define the industry. You have to define the players in the industry. You have to define companies that you call what? Peer group. Me and you can be in the same industry, but we're not peers. It's like you competing, it's like you comparing Wema Bank with Zenith Bank. Are they the same? They are in the same industry, but they are not peers. They are not peers. Next is what? Industry survey. You need to understand the size, how the industry is growing, the characters in that industry, their profitability, market share trends. Should I give you guys one gist? You know, in the cement industry, Lafarge was the major player. My father was the major player. Dangote was a small boy. And before you know it, Dangote took over. Bam. Then, before you know it, what happened? Boy entered the picture and says what? You think that you can run away with all the profitability in the industry? I'm going to battle you. And they started doing what? They started doing price wars amongst themselves. What did Lafarge do? Lafarge just sat back and was looking at both of them. You both can be fighting. Me, I'll be taking advantage of you both fighting. So anywhere you guys go, I would follow. But you both can be doing your fighting between yourselves. That's what is playing out in the cement industry. Now, industry structure. There's something we're going to learn today called Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces. And determine the most important factor and what to monitor. Then we're not going to go to. So Porter's 5 forces helps you to explain the industry dynamics. Then we'll now land it with what? External influences. That's why you use pistol. Political influences, economic influences, social influences, technology influences. I'm sorry, you. I am not an old guy, but who can remember video club? Did you grow up in my time when we used to go to video club? You know what video club is? Bros, you know what video club is? Video club, we used to go and rent movies. VHS cassettes. Back in the days, you go and register. Be paying for every time you rent the movie, you pay. You do not tell you that within 48 hours, you must return it. You will not be praying that within that 48 hours, they will not take light. Because if they take light, you will not watch it. And if they take light while you're watching it, you'll be stuck. For every day, extra day that you do not return it, what happens? You will pay. What has killed that industry? Technology. Technology has rapidly advanced to the extent that even DVDs. Should I tell you the truth? Do you want to hear the truth? I don't watch GSTV again. The only thing that makes me watch GSTV is football. I am always on Netflix or Prime. I would always go to Netflix. If it's a movie I want to watch, I will see one movie. Even though the movie might be stupid, I will watch it. If I'm looking for a series that will take my time, I will locate it. The one that will make me be there, I'll watch it for almost 3 months. I'm still watching it. It's there. So ask me, why do I need GSTV? Because of football. Then my colleague came one day and said, "Did you know that there's a place that you can go to online? Like I'm watching match. It's not only Chelsea match you watch. I'm watching match. So you don't need GSTV." But I still pay for GSTV because of my wife. There are some things that she still watches on GSTV. Then lastly, competitive analysis. Yeah, you need to understand what competitive strategy that company is executing. And if that is leading to what? Competitive advantage. Yeah, okay. So let's move on. So, firstly, industry classification. Yeah, industry classification. To help analysts contend with these difficulties, third-party organizations maintain industry classification schemes. So third parties, e.g., the likes of MSCI, the likes of S&P, the likes of FTSE, they've all been able to help us to create industry classification schemes that you can understand each industry based on their classification and even identify companies that fit into that industry. And some of these industries have sub-industry. So healthcare is an industry. But remember that under healthcare, there are different sub-industries. So there's pharmaceutical under healthcare. There's medical services under healthcare. There's medical instruments manufacturing under healthcare. Yeah, but they are all under the healthcare industry. Yeah, so what these guys have done is they've created a template where they've created the different types of industries, different types of sub-industries, the sub-industries in the different types of industries, and giving you the criteria that you need to consider in order for you to say this company is part of this industry. Yeah. So those are third party. So you can see on the screen, there are three different types of people. This first guy, GICS by S&P and S&P Dow Jones and MSCI. They said that there are 11 sectors. They don't start with they don't call it industry, they call it sectors of the economy. There are 11 sectors of the economy, and within those sectors, there are 25 industrial groups. And based on industrial groups, there are 74 industries and 163 sub-industries. But their classification starts with what? 11 sectors. And they said the sectors are what? Energy, financials, materials, information technology, industries, communication services, consumer discretionary, utilities, consumer staples, real estate, and healthcare. So what they are saying is, no matter the organization that you are, you must fall in within these 11 sectors, one way or the other. Bros, try it. Call me a company. Baba, I will steal you for both as well. Football teams, wow. Baba, free football team first. Let's stay. Give me. You have a very valid point. You have a very, but most times we don't put those guys as, even though, to be honest, they are actually movers of economies. Because imagine they say they want to do World Cup, in Nigeria now. The kind of money that will flow into this country everywhere. All the roads in Nigeria will be like Tomiland Bridge. But why can't all the roads in Nigeria be like Tomiland Bridge? Gradual process. They use that one to test us first, to show us that they long about. Anyway, name 2 companies or 3 companies. They will fall within these levels. Name. If you call Amazon will tell you that it's a tech company. So most likely fall into information technology. Churches. Bros, churches no be organization now. Give me better organization. Do you get? So, but you understand the logic, yeah? Now, there's another guy called ICB by FTSE. They said theirs is starting from 11 industries. They've been able to identify 11 industries, which are basically the same 11 sectors that the first guy had mentioned. No difference whatsoever. 25 industry groups. Yeah, you have to go and Google, check them out. If you, like I said, they are existing templates. If you check them out, you'll be able to drill down. You'll be able to drill down. Yeah, but what this other guy actually is now more encompassing. He has 14 economic sectors, and under the 14 economic sectors, he has added 3 more sectors, which goes back to what you're saying. Institutions, associations, and organizations. That is where your churches are going to fall into. Yeah, that's where that's where your football might most likely fall into this institution, association, and organizations. Then you have government activity. Then you have academic and educational services. Very key. It's more what, brother, yeah. Yeah. And education in UK, education sector, as a money spinner. Money spinner. Imagine if Nigerians say they are not going to UK again to school. You know the kind of problem that those guys are going to face. Freelancer. Okay. You don't know the freelancer again. You are freelancing to something now. You're a freelancer to something. So freelancer to what? So you have to be freelancer to something. But you guys get the whole logic. Now, these are for private, third-party private characteristics, classification. We also have government classification. There are also government classifications too. Yeah. So the likes of the NAIC, I think they should be down. But let's move on. Yeah. So classifying companies into industries. They've given us a template of how to classify companies into industries. A company has a segment, a single segment of business line, classified based on the segment and business line. Simple. A bank is a bank. It must go into what? The banking industry. Yeah. It's just a given. Yeah. However, a company that has multiple, remember when I said about UAC, a company that has multiple business lines, classified based on the business line that generates more than 60% of revenue. Yeah. If none generates more than 60% revenue, classified based on segment of business line with 50% revenue or profit or assets. If none, use discretion or classify as multi-industry conglomerate. Discretion includes market perception, growth rate of segment, and business model. So meaning that, imagine if I have 3 businesses and they all contribute equally, less than equally 30%. It's be hard to classify the company as well. So he said, just that kind of company, just classify it as what? Conglomerate. But most times, most companies will always have their money spinners now. You always have that company that is the major driver of the organization. No matter how it was. That's why it's saying 60% profit. So if it boils down to then conglomerate. That's what I said. So you classification of conglomerate does not feel like so but that's what they're saying, because to me, even sitting down, so those are the add exceptional to the rule kind of companies, which is why I wanted to use UACN. It's UACN that comes to my mind in Nigeria. Just what I'm saying, that they are all over the whole place. Back then, though, but they've sort of changed. Now, what are the limitations of these third-party industry classification schemes? While these classification schemes are a useful starting place for research, they have 4 important limitations that analysts must contend with in doing industry research. 1, grouping of companies with business model variation that sell substitute products. The classification of multi-product companies, like we have entered or put ourselves now. Geographical consideration. Yeah. Changes in grouping over time that affect period comparability of industry statistics. Now, let's try and see the first one. Yeah, analysts might find that industry groupings in third-party schemes are either too narrow or too broad, as the scheme providers use discretion in constructing groups based on product similarity and business model. Therefore, analysts must either use classification tiers at a higher or lower level, or modify the groupings based on their own discretion and purpose of analysis. On the one hand, many companies classified as application software sells products with completely different functionality and do not compete with one another. So make sense. Do you understand what that means? So they said, for example, Shopify, a Canadian company that sells front-end and payment processing software to small and mid-sized e-commerce companies, is grouped with Checkpoint Software, an Israeli security software company. So you understand what I'm saying? So just what they're saying. So there's a group called application software. People that create application software. You know, Kaspersky. Kaspersky is what? Bam. Are they not selling application software? Are they the same thing with Google, with Microsoft? What does Microsoft do? Application software. Are they the same? Are they competitors? Do they sell the same business? But you put them in the same application software because they sell application software. That's what they're trying to say. That is exactly what they're trying to say. So you need to go deep to be able to say, don't just take the groupings at surface level. You need to go deep to say Pepsi provides Coke. Coke drink. We didn't call it Coke. We can't call it Coke again now because the real guy is called Coke. Coca-Cola. Okay, they sell Coke. Coke drink. Coke. While Coca-Cola sells Coke drink. Yeah? Those are direct competitors. Another competitor is what? Biggie. Yeah? Then you called one today that I've never heard before. American Cola. Those are direct competitors. But do you know that I can put all of them into one group called beverages? Yeah? I add Nigerian breweries into it. Is Nigerian breweries a competitor? No. But are they in the same industry? Yes. Does that make sense? So that's the point. So you need to ensure that you are looking at like versus like. Like we said earlier, multi-product companies are a big concern. Very, very big concern. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Do you know this phone that I'm using? It's called Google Pixel. Yes, Pixel. Do you know that Google makes phones? You've never heard of it before. Google makes phones. Yeah. Let me see if I can prove it so that people will not think that I'm lying. Let me see if there's Google logo at the back. Can you see the logo? Can you see the logo? Can you see the logo now? So that's Google. You know the point I'm trying to drive at? What will you classify Google as? They do software. They do phone. They do cloud. They do you know that they are into communication services? The email that you are sending, communication services. What will you classify Google? Tell me. Infotech. So that's like an easy way. Do you get an easy way to sort of go about it? Anyway, you guys get the whole logic. Now, with global nature, these guys are useful for some sectors and industries that are in fact global, but they can use less. They can be less useful for more service-oriented companies that compete nationally or even locally because of customer behavior or regulation that restricts competition. Yeah, so meaning that because of the because of the geography or location that you are at, you might be benefiting from providing a service monopoly so that there's nobody competing with you. So if I add you into that group, then I've been at the service, because anybody that carries that group and say they want to analyze that group and don't iron out that guy to say this guy is not a competitor, he's a sole owner of that service in his country, he cannot be competing. So like I said, what I'm just getting here is, do not take that information that you get from them at face value. You still need to drill down to do what? To have a better understanding of what it is. Yeah. Okay. You don't. You felt it would have been this super complicated though. Super complicated. Yeah. So look at what they did here. The sector is consumer staples. Yeah. The what do they call that thing? Consumer staples are necessities, food, things that people will continue to use. Yeah. Now they said the industry group is consumer staples, distribution, and retail. They said the industry is consumer staples, distribution, and retail. The subgroup is consumer staples, merchandise, retail. The other companies that are within that group, Costco, Walmart, BJ's, Atibebelo. It's all right. But you guys get the whole logic. Alternative methods of grouping companies. An industry or product approach to grouping companies is not the only grouping method and may be useful and may be less useful in context outside industry analysis. Other approaches that are used in context such as index construction and investment performance evaluation include the following. You can group based on geography, your geographical location. You can also group based on sensitivity to business cycles. Are you cyclical or are you defensive? Cyclical or non-cyclical? Those are like the two, how sensitive you are to business cycle. Are you the company that when the business cycle is up, you are also up? When it's down, you are down? Or are you the company that regardless of the business cycle, you follow your own trajectory? Yeah, so that's sensitivity. Another one is statistical analysis, statistical similarity. Okay, so as I was saying, let's now move to industry survey. Remember that we are going through the steps. We have looked at classification. We're now looking at industry survey. After defining an industry, the next step in industry and competitive analysis is to survey the industry by estimating its size, calculating its historical growth rate, evaluating the character of that growth rate, measuring its profitability, and identifying major industry players and market share trends over time. This industry survey provides the basis for the industry evaluation in the next step and makes analysts aware of the main issues and opportunities. So now let's look at industry size, historical growth rate. Industry size is typically measured by the total annual sales from the product or customer perspective, which is not necessarily all sales of each industry constituent. For example, Amazon's retail segment sales will be included in sizing the retail industry, while the sales of its Amazon Web Services segment would not. So you know what they're saying? So what they're saying is your profitability as a business, your revenue as a business might not form part of a particular industry's revenue. Might not form part of the industry size, because size is as a result of the total sales or annual sales from that product of that industry. So a typical example is, let me use an example. They use Amazon now because Amazon is a bit all over the place. Yeah. So if we ask ourselves, what is the size of Nigerian banking industry right now? What are we going to do? We're going to take the gross earnings of all the banks in Nigeria. Bam, that's the industry size. And that's what I call it, industry size. The growth rate is calculated either as a year-on-year growth in that total sales that you have calculated. Last year, this year, that is the year-on-year growth. Or you can grow based on compounded annual growth rate over a long time. Post-COVID, how has the Nigerian banking industry grown? What was the total gross earnings of that industry in 2021 versus where it is now? That is our post-COVID. Can I ask you a question? When did Access Bank buy Diamond Bank? 2019. As at 2019, the market share of Access Bank was less than GTB, Zenith, UBA. They were probably the number 4 in Fugas or number 5. I know they couldn't have been bigger than those top 4, those 4 guys, but they were there, top 5. But you know what? Do you know the truth now? Right now, fast forward 4 years after, they're what? They're number 1. No, market size of that banking industry. They were probably number 5 as at 2020. Now they're what? Number 1. And they're growing bigger and bigger as the year goes by. And as I keep telling people, that is a company that you should buy. That's the company that you should buy. So how that total annual sales has grown over the years, you use what we call compounded annual growth rate. Except for some industries that are dominated by large publicly traded companies, industry size will often include a potentially large amount in sales from private companies, sometimes small businesses for which data are unavailable and impractical to calculate. So basically, that's how you know the company size and how the company grows over time. Now, characterizing industry growth. The pattern of historical growth of an industry can be used to characterize it based on the magnitude of its growth rate and sensitivity to the business cycle. One approach to characterizing industry growth rate is what we call a style box. Yeah, as seen in Exhibit 5, where on the Y side you have cyclical and defensive, and on the X side you have mature and growth. So what you are doing is you are putting each of these industries and sectors in the side box that fits them. So what we're saying here is defensive and matured stocks are mostly what? Utilities, beverages, and pharmaceuticals. Cyclical and growth, semiconductors, fintechs, and digital advertising. Digital advertising will continue to grow. That's why a lot of us are now what? Influencers. Yeah? Digital influencers. Why? Because it still leads to digital advertising. That is a as long as human beings are creative, that is an industry that will continue to grow. Yeah? But you see the funny thing, they are cyclical. Why? if a company, if the economy goes into a recession, who will do digital advert? Who will pay money for digital advert? Yeah. So that's just trying to very cyclical and mature oil and gas industry. Very cyclical and mature. It flows, that industry fluctuates with the economy. If the economy is good, they do well. If the economy is bad. And they are very tied to what? Crude oil prices. It's all right. So now, industry profitability measures. The best measure of industry profitability is a time series of the distribution of returns on invested capital, which captures after-tax operating profit for each dollar of invested capital and is agnostic about capital structure. However, unless the industry is dominated by public companies, obtaining this delta is what? It's not feasible. So you are looking at the after-tax operating profits. That means operating profits after tax. That's no part. No. That's net operating profit after tax. Yes, no part divided by in total your invested capital. That's equity plus debt. And you look at that trend over time. It's kind of shocking. Like I like what they said here. How will you get it for private companies? Private companies that don't release their financials. Yeah, so it's difficult, but it's a good one. Now, market share trends and major players. That's where you make use of something called HHI, Effingdown Expand Index. I'm sure this guy must definitely be German or Russian. Effingdown and Expand. Anyway, now in this, we want to know what we call concentration, or is the market concentrated or fragmented? Finally, market shares are measured by expressing industry participants' annual revenue as a percentage of the industry size each year, which is why I mentioned that if you look at Access Bank 5 years ago, their contribution to the banking industry's gross earning most likely will be what? Will be lower than where it is today, because today they're the largest contributor to that. So they've grown over time. They've offloaded Zenith Bank and GTB. First Bank is even in Lena said. Yeah. So given the aforementioned measurement problems with estimating industry size, market shares should be interpreted as a range rather than a definitive point estimate. An additional consideration in analysis is the degree of industry concentration. How concentrated? Low concentration, that is many small competitors in the market. Yeah, is usually associated with a high degree of competitive intensity, unless the industry is very service oriented, is local in nature, or has high product differentiation. Rising concentration, consolidation, is associated with falling competitive intensity and high profitability. A common measure of industry concentration is HHI, calculated as the sum of squares of competitive market share. It's all right. So a market consisting of 4 firms with their market shares as 30, 30, 20, 20 would have an HHI of what? 2,600. That means you square all their market shares and sum it up. Yeah. The maximum HHI for a monopoly with the maximum HHI is for a monopoly with a value of what? 10,000. Yeah. Antitrust regulation in some countries consider markets with an HHI between 1,500 and 2,500 moderately concentrated, and consider markets over 2,500 to be what? Highly concentrated. So this guy that has 2,600 might be considered to be what? Highly concentrated. A rule of thumb is that acquisition is in highly concentrated markets that increase the HHI by more than 200 points are often subject to regulatory changes. Meaning that if you do an acquisition and they calculate the market share of that industry after your acquisition, and the HHI increases by 200 points, they will slam you for antitrust activities. But not in Nigeria, shall. But remember that we're not writing a Nigerian exam, we're writing an American exam. Does it make sense? Okay. Industry structure and external influences. Like I said, this is where you're going to look at Porter's 5 forces. So Porter 5 forces is a framework for assessing industry structure that determines an industry's long-run profitability measure by its return on invested capital. Now, these are the 5 forces. Threat of substitute, bargaining power of suppliers, threat of new entrants, bargaining power of customers, and in the middle, rivalry amongst existing competitors. At every point in time, if you are doing analysis of the industry, you need to be able to answer these 5 things for what you can observe about the industry. So let's start with the first one, threat of new entrants. Is it easy for people to enter that industry? A typical example is, can somebody wake up one day today and say he wants to go and create a cement company? Not really, not that easy. So for the likes of guys in that industry, you have to be a massive juggernaut to say that you want to wake up one day and say you want to enter that industry. The same thing with refinery. Nobody in this world would. Anybody that will wake up one day and say they want to do refinery, you don't go there to do refinery. They will go and they will yen when, because that guy the yen when, as he speaks, is yen when, left, right, and center. So the threat of entry is what? Is low. Unlike Mr. Malam that is selling Pepsi and biscuits and Gala down the road. Me, concept, I can wake up one day and say, I'm not going to work again. I want to start selling Coke, Gary, biscuits, chin chin, and Gala down the road. It's not for me to pack money and go and do it. And look for one shed and sit down and start selling. The threat of entry is what? Is high. So you need to be able to understand what is happening in each industry. The next one is threat of substitute. What's the biggest substitute to Coca-Cola? Did you guys ever watch that advert? Not if it wasn't an advert, it was Ronaldo's press conference that he moved the Coke bottle away from his front and added and brought water to his front. Do you know what that is? Do you know how much sales Coca-Cola lost because of that singular act? Because of that singular act, has to show you that water is a big substitute to this guy. So the question is, for the products that industry is pushing, is there a major threat from what? Another product that can come one day and become and clear that product off the shelf. A typical example is, like I said, Video Club. Where is Video Club today? Where to be found? I grew up in Vesta. There was a massive Video Club, 3 floors. 3 floors that you use description to find where comedy movies are. You use description to find where thriller movies are. That's how big it is. And then we're always excited. But now look at today. Gone. Threat of what? Substitute. You need to be, and obviously, if the threat of substitute is high, you should know that that industry is not going to last. It's not going to last. And if it lasts, then it means that there's something. So a typical example is, why is there Coke and Fanta? Because there are some people that are addicts to these drinks. Sugar is what? Aha. Aha. So you see that even though they have substitute of water, every sun, what's sun doing again? Eh? You drink, that's what has happened to me now. My throat was dry and I didn't want to take water. I drove the whole length of this street looking for where to buy until she saved me. So no doubt about that. Yeah. But I will also say that there are some industries that no matter how innovative they are going to go. If their time is up, they are going to go. Nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop it.
The company can basically be evolved.
Yes.
As they are evolving, as humans are evolving.
Definitely.
For example, what happens to the likes of BlackBerry
and Nokia? So what happened to Nokia? So let's use Nokia as an example. What happened to Nokia?
Nokia was right. Yeah, they believe in themselves. Like, they didn't know that people can actually they didn't know that people can actually change. They didn't believe that people will change. Android website. Yeah, of course. They never
So for me, what killed Nokia is touchscreen phone. Touchscreen phone. So to them, they never felt it. I think for me, they misunderstood human behavior. Or let's say misunderstood, underrated human behavior. That a human being will be willing to carry a TV. This is a TV now. Willing to carry a TV all over the whole place. People would rather prefer to have their button, their keypad, and be pressing keypad. That had TV screen like this. So for them, I agree with you. So when it was complacency, they didn't want to change. They believed that they had the superior software. No, BlackBerry's own was the moment they cracked WhatsApp, that was the end. Because the only thing BlackBerry had was that instant message. So the moment they cracked that WhatsApp like this, that was the end. The what? Yeah. Just most of this IPL just change Are you sure I'm not blocking somebody? I have a feeling Nigeria than you. My TV they are looking for. Okay, so the next one is bargaining power of suppliers. So you need to understand the suppliers of to that industry. So let me give you guys an example. Milo, Bonfita. Who are their major suppliers? God bless you. Who has more? Do the cocoa suppliers have a bargaining power than Nestle? So those are the things that you need to understand. Why? So that's to show you the relevance or strength that Nestle has. Nestle and Cadbury has. You get my point. If it was the reverse, then there's a problem. So that means the day cocoa farmers strike, the business is going down.
So if they are two extremes, that's when I feel like.
Okay, so I would say it's two extremes. Welcome back to you and Sam. Sorry, slight internet disruption, but we haven't gone far. We're still where we are. So if I understand you right, one thing first is that your suppliers are the people that are supplying goods to you. Your customers are the people that are giving you goods to. Yeah. A company that has strength controls those two markets conveniently. So I can dictate the price that I want my suppliers to deliver things to me, and I can dictate price towards customers. A company that runs or operates with that level of strength is a quality company. You are getting my point. Now, it's not extreme, it's just a degree of, so it's not absolute, but it's just some level of strength that you can, let's say out of all your suppliers, I can comfortably control 80%. If I tell all my suppliers now that don't bring anything to me at 1,000 naira, bring it to me at 800 naira, some people will still bring. Majority of them will still bring. That shows my strength. You get my point? Because those are the inputs that I need to create products to my customers. Now, your strength of your customers is now around, if your customer says they're not buying your products, let me give you an example. Banks don't have control over their customers. Have you realized? Banks don't have control over their customers. If I wake up today and say I don't like GTB again, or GTB Daru, I go to First Bank. They don't have control over me. If they increase their price today of something and I don't like them again, what do I do? Plunk them away. I can't open account to. It's not free to open account. I can't open account to Access Bank. That's what we're talking about in terms of bargaining power of customers. Do the customers have power over you or not? So you need to do this analysis to understand the structure that the company is operating, the industry is operating on. Then the next is external evaluation. External evaluation. The next is external evaluation. For external influences, we use something called PISTO. We look at the political environment, we look at the economic environment, we look at the social environment, we look at the technological environment, the legal environment, and the environmental interests, basically. So, do you have political factors that affect you as an industry? So today, if a policy comes out, are you going to get affected? Is the government even interested in your industry? That's another thing you should find out. Is the government interested in that industry such that there's a high possibility that some policies will be passed that will affect that industry? Then economic. How does the economic variables affect you? Interest rates, and all those things. Exchange rates. Social. When you talk about social influences, what kind of people or caliber of people are attracted to that industry? How do their behavior affect your industry? A typical example is Ronaldo. The moment Ronaldo moved Coca-Cola from his table and put water, what happened? Share of Coca-Cola dropped. That's the social impact. Then technology can never be overemphasized. We have said it here severally. Are there any technological changes that would come and affect your industry? A typical example is what? Blockbuster. Blockbuster is Video Club. Typical example is Blockbuster, which is Video Club. can criticize, analyze. So the next is what? Legal. Yeah. The next is legal. For legal, what are the rules, the law, the regulation that can affect that industry? A typical example, my brother, CBN, banking industry, recapitalization, that is regulation affecting it. And I can bet you that a lot of companies are going to what? A lot of banks are going to what? They will most likely stop existing. Either they will be bought 2 years. So can I ask a question?
Not like that.
So a bank like Optimus Bank, you know Optimus Bank?
Yeah.
Max, they will end up being a regional bank. Max. Just what I'm saying. National is what? 200 billion. International is what? 500 billion. So they were most likely be regional. Regional is what? Maybe 100 billion. I can't remember. So BAM. Merchant Bank is what? 50 billion too. Most people. A guy that started his bank at barely less than 1 year, that struggled to find 25 billion naira. And I tell you that for him to play as a national bank, he has to bring 200 billion naira. There's time to make that up, but by the time you look at it, based on those results, I'll go and look for how to merge and move on with my life. So that's legal. Then your environmental influences. Yeah. Environmental influences. So that's your pistol. You need to understand how these various factors affect the industry. Yeah, how they impact the industry. So if you go to environmental, so so legal and opportunities, there's some things where you're talking about. You guys are aware of ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So how does your activities affect your environment? Yeah, that's what is happening to a lot of oil companies now, that they have the host community development fund. Yeah, to ensure that all the things that they've done to the environment will be adequately replaced. Yeah, so right. Moving on. Now, competitive positioning. You need to understand the competitive strategy of the company. And you need to ask that question from 3 angles. Does the strategy create a defense against the 5 industry forces? Does the strategy benefit from, or is at least not at odds with, the expected external industry influences identified by Pistol? Does the company have the resources and capabilities to execute the strategy? So when you are looking at the competitive strategy effectiveness, you need to look at it from these 3 angles. Yeah. However, hold on. What do these guys do? Are you kidding me? So the strategies are more around 3 areas. Yeah. You have the cost leadership strategy, product differentiation strategy, or focus. They've just added focus. Formerly it used to be cost leadership and product differentiation. So cost leadership is, do you know, I always tell people that the 2 biggest banks for a very long time were Zenith Bank and GTB. And should I tell you one big truth? Across the 5 big banks, GTB generates the lowest revenue. GTB generates the lowest revenue. But you see the funny thing, GTB generates amongst the top three, top two self profitability. Why? They've run with a strategy called cost leadership. Should I tell you one guy something? You go to a branch, GTB branch, the full staff there cannot be more than 4. Majority of the people there are contract staff. But they've been able to offer those contract staff some value that they enjoy what they are doing. But they are contract staff. Only 4 people might be full staff. The person that heads the banking all, the branch manager, the person that is maybe 2 or 3 people, let's say 2 or 3 people in business development, in sales. Every other person contract staff. All those guys that you talk to at the teller, contract staff. But you see any bank, everybody is a full staff. You can even see an assistant manager, the person that is paying money at the counter. You're getting my point. But what strategy is any bank adopting? Any bank started adoption of what we call product differentiation. Look, I remember when Stanley Bank would tell you that in order for you to open an account, you must have 100,000 naira, but for the big boys. And what is any bank do? Any bank understood their Nigerians' behavior. If I want to show class, I give you a Zenith Bank account number. What will you say? You're a big boy. Yeah, Sabi. Then if I give you GTB, you say, can't guy with this one. GTB na 009 this open account. Are you sure you don't have that account when you invest? But when you say Zenith Bank, big boy. So they did what they call product differentiation. So we don't call it product differentiation again. They call it differentiation, meaning that they selected, fragmented their market to be able to identify their own their own client. Then the next is what? Focus, proximity to customers, and strong understanding of their needs. May incorporate elements of strategy of both cost leadership and differentiation, but focus on a particular group. This is a sweet table to look at. You can look at it when you are going through your readings, but those are the 3 strategies that we should focus on. And we need to understand how these strategies helps the company in navigating through through the industry. So we are done with this reading. Let's move to the next reading. I want us to try and see. I want to see if we can finish equity today. Now, the next reading is company analysis. Let's give ourselves a 3 minutes break. So, company analysis, forecasting. So this is the final part of the 3 sessions regarding company analysis, and it focuses on forecasting. Yeah. So forecasts of companies' financial statements are used by analysts in valuation to make investment recommendations. Developing the forecast or projection is an important aspect of the analyst's job. Yeah. So before you can determine, remember that the value of a company is the present value of its future cash flows. And in order for you to be able to determine the future cash flows, you need to forecast. And that was the whole essence of what we have been doing. So in order for you to forecast, you need to first check out what has happened in the past, what is happening in the present, then also look at what the company is, how the company's industry, how the company functions within that industry, who are the company's competitors, how is the company doing, then you can now go ahead to do what? To sort of forecast. I don't expect this to be a very long reading. So please, after this class, somebody should remind me, hold on. Maybe I can even send it to you guys now. So there's a guy that I saw him do a video of forecasts. He was forecasting, he was doing the what's that thing called? He was doing trying to find the value of Dangote cement. So forecast object, principles, and approaches. Approaches to forecasting vary by analyst and setting. Analysts who publish companies' research for external distribution tend to maintain quarterly forecasts and invest a great deal of effort to achieve forecast accuracy of revenue and earning per share estimates. So those are the two main things I are forecasting: revenue and earnings, but predominantly revenue. If I can determine how your revenue is going to grow, and I assume that every other thing in terms of proportion of all those other elements to your revenue stays intact, I can sort of what's that thing called, forecast the future of what your earnings will be. So if over the last 5 years, on an average, your cost to revenue ratio is 50%, I can assume that if your revenue between this year and next year grows by 40%, 50% of what that growth, that's next year, as forecasted revenue will be, 50% of it can be assumed to also be your cost, such that it flows to your earnings. But we won't do that because we also understand that inflation is happening. Yeah. So if I assume that your cost is also going to be 50%, then I might be shooting myself in the leg. So what do? I might say, okay, your cost income ratio, because of inflation, might increase from 50% to 65%. So by the time I forecast your growth by 40, I say cost to income ratio grows from 50% to 65%. I can determine what, if I know what the revenue is, based on the cost to income ratio of 65%, I can determine what the cost would be given the revenue, and use that to determine what your PBT is. Does that make sense? Exactly. So that's basically, what are you forecasting? Drivers of financial statement lines. So each of those lines, you want to forecast them. And like I said, you use the past and put a bit of reality into it to say, okay, would this reduce or would this increase? This proportion to what? To revenue. Yeah. Individual financial statement lines. Summary measures such as cash flows, ad hoc objects, focus on objects that are regularly disclosed. They can never tell you to forecast in the exam. Forecast approaches. I wonder why they went all deep to be teaching you guys. This wasn't in the curriculum before. So I wonder why they changed the curriculum to be telling you guys to learn how to forecast. Eh? So they can ask you OBJ questions around it, but telling you to forecast is. So forecast approaches for financial statement objects. Historical results assume past is precedent. That's what I told you now. You just assume that what is happening in the past is going to continue in the future. So you use that and carry on. Yeah. Historical base rates and convergence. Yeah. Then management guidance. So in sometimes when you read the financial statement, the management may tell you in their management guidance in the financial statement on how they expect future to be. Then lastly, analyst discretion and what? Or discretionary forecast. Even me, like I said, I might just assume because of inflation, I don't expect that this thing will stay the same way it is. So let's increase. Now, remember my understanding about industry. Remember what I spoke about buyers bargaining power. Imagine if I tell you that Pepsi might increase the price of their bottle of Coke by 50 naira next year. And you ask me why, and I say because I just have a feeling that against their competition, they can increase this by 15 naira. I have a good reason to back that decision. Now, who has more bargaining power, Pepsi or customers? Pepsi. People, even like if you like, let them increase by 50 naira, people that want to drink Coke will still drink Coke. You are getting my point. I know some people that they will say they will never drink Biggie. There's nothing in this world that can make them drink Biggie. Never. You are getting my point. So they have their loyal fans, so that if we increase the price, their loyal fans. So if I understand the percentage of sales that's attributable to their loyal fans, I can technically say if I increase price of Pepsi or Coke by 15 naira, I can see how that flows into the increase in revenue. So that's analyst. You need to determine how far into the future you want to forecast. The further you go, the harder for you to what? Be more accurate. So what I always do, I don't do more than 3 years. Anything beyond 3 years, I'm out stretching it. I like 3 years. Anything beyond 3 years, it becomes. So 5 years from now, how do you know what will happen in 2029? But 3 years from now, at least I can sort of tell you it's more realistic. But people do 5 years. It's more realistic. 3 years. Even as companies say, when we're doing our budgeting, we used to do 5-year forecast. Then after 5 years, you now start telling you that every 2 years you have to start updating your 5-year forecast. Because anything can change. But selecting that thing is very critical. So forecasting revenue, forecast objects of revenue. Now, if you are forecasting revenue, do you want to do top-down or bottom-up approach? Top-down is you are flowing from GDP, flowing into industry, considering the person's market share. So how is the economy going to grow? How is the contribution of that industry to the economy going to grow? What is this company's market share in that industry to determine the benefit that will accrue to that company in terms of revenue? That's top down. Bottom up is you go to the source. What are the number of customers this client has? What is the possibility that customer is going to increase? How is he going to increase it? How is price going to go up or stay down? With that, I can use that to forecast. So bottom up is I am doing this guy focusing on you. But bottom up is I am taking it from the approach of the economy all the way down. A lot of people prefer to use the economy all the way down. Yeah, less stress. So forecasting operating expenses, cost of goods sold, gross profit margin. Yeah. How do you feel that the cost of goods sold is going to change? Then you take it as a percentage of sales. That will also help you with your gross margin, gross profit margin. Do you feel gross profit margin is going to increase or is going to decrease relative to all the different factors? If revenue goes up and cost and gross profit margin stays the same, gross profit margin is going to. So yeah, each line item quite kind of interesting, Sha. So forecast capital investment and capital structure. What are this one is more from management information in the financials. What are the capital expenditures that you feel that they might embark on vis-a-vis their growth potentials? Then how are they going to get sources of capital for that expansion? Are they going to borrow? Are they going to use equity? Majority of the time they're going to borrow. So what is going to be the borrow and how is that going to change their capital structure? So if you focus on each of these exhibits, I think you should be fine. Then you have to do scenario analysis. Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the last reading, and we call it a day afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Now, this is the cocoa of the cocoa. That's why I rushed it. I rushed with equity valuation. Now, everything that you have been learning, this is where we want to make use of it. This is the important part. This is how you value a company. Yeah. This is how you value a company. Now, remember that there's a difference between intrinsic value and market value. Intrinsic value is the fundamental value of that company, given your own forecast, giving your own the information that you have about that company. Does that make sense? So basically, your intrinsic value is your own personal or true value of that company. Yeah. And everything that we're doing here is based on what? Determining what that estimated value is or what that intrinsic value is. Remember that a company that the intrinsic value is greater than the market value, what is that company called? Is it undervalued or overvalued? Intrinsic value is greater than market value. Is it undervalued or overvalued? Is undervalued. While if the intrinsic value is less than the market value, then it's what? It's overvalued. And when intrinsic value is equals to market value, then it's what? Fairly valued. Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, there's something we call convergence. The whole essence of calling a company undervalued is if I say your intrinsic value is greater than your market value, you're undervalued. Now, the expectation is convergence, which is at a particular point in the future, the market is going to realize the potential of that company. That value you do not see. And what happens? The market value would rise to meet the intrinsic value. The same for the what? Overvalue. Market value will drop to meet the what? The intrinsic value. Yeah. But my problem is how long convergence would happen is that time horizon for convergence is where the comma is. It can happen faster than you think, and it can happen longer than you think. There's really no analysis to how long that convergence is going to happen. Yeah. Market value. It's mostly the market value running to go and meet the intrinsic value. Yeah, but how long that would take? Somebody said one time, I will never forget this. I say this a lot. Somebody said Nestle is going to be about 2,500 naira. I don't know what is Nestle now. That was a very long time ago. I really can't remember how long it took. So the lady must have talked about that thing in 2019. Okay, moving on. Categories of equity valuation models. Categories of equity valuation models. There are 3 types of equity valuation models. You have the present value models, we have the multiplier models, and we have what we call the asset-based valuation models. The present value models, also called the discounted cash flow models, run on the assumption that what? The value of the company is determined by the what? The present value of its what? Future cash. So if you can identify a company's future cash flows and bring those future cash flows to the present, it should be equivalent to its what? Its value, intrinsic value. Yeah. Now, that's what drives the present value. And the present value or the discounted cash flow models have 2 types. The dividend discount model, which is based on what? Dividends, assuming that the cash flows are what? Dividends, or the free cash flow to the equity model, meaning that the actual cash flow to you as a shareholder is the what? Is the total cash flow that should be paid to you. And it is from that cash flow that the company removes the dividends that it pays to you. So what you are entitled to year in, year out is the free cash flow to the equity shareholders. Yeah. So those are the two types of what? Present value models. Now, we have what? Multiplier models or market multiplier models. This assumption, this model based on the assumption of what? One price. Is based on the assumption of one price. Meaning that two similar things should be what? To have the same price. If I bring two C-class, Mercedes-Benz C-class, and I park both of them outside, you should tell me that the price of C-class A should be the same price of C-class B. The moment both of them are not the same, there's a problem. And that's what multiplier model is talking about. Similar things should have what? The same price. Yeah. Now, that's where you have the what? Price to earning ratio. Price to earning ratio. That's where you have PE model, PE multiples. Yes, sorry, PE multiples. Price to earning multiples. Yeah. Now, the last one now is the asset-based valuation model, which is assumed the total value of your assets. The total value of the assets after you back out what? Liabilities should be your true value. So your book value in the financial statement should actually be your true value. Such that by the time we revalue all your assets and back out your liabilities, whatever is left is the true value of your what? Is the true book value or your intrinsic value, technically. Yeah. So let's dive into each one of them. Background for dividend discount model. Yeah. Now, dividends has been assumed that is the cash flow that you receive for investing in what? Equities. Anybody that invests in equities should expect cash dividends as what? As a payback. So, and your investment from equity, for your investment in equities should be what? Should be backed by the dividends that you receive. Yeah. And present value of those cash dividend distributions are what we now use to determine what? The value of the company. So there are a lot of readings here: stock splits, stock dividends, share splits, share buybacks, all those things, declaration date, exit date, order of record, payment date. Those are all things that you can read at your own time. I want us to go deep dive straight because of time. Now, dividend discount model and free cash flow model. I have to stand up. I cannot sit down again because I need to start writing. Okay. So the company says that, or the curriculum says, you can see the board. The curriculum says that your discounts, your dividend discount model, DDM, is given by the formula that your value of your stock at time 0 is equals to the sum product to infinity, meaning that you are holding this stock to infinity, where your dividends divided by 1 plus r raised to power what? T. Where T runs from 1 to what? Basically saying that the present value of all your future cash, assuming that you own that stock, what? Maturity. So this is your primary formula for your what? for your dividend discount model. Yeah. Now, hold on. Oh. Trying to. Is it trying to? Okay. Now, but you know, in reality, people don't own stocks. You hold stocks for a definite time. You buy it at time 0 and you hold it to N. Let's say N is equals to what? 5. Yeah?
What does that mean by maturity?
Maturity.
Like, what does that mean by maturity? What does it mean when you hold stock to maturity?
Did I say maturity now?
You said normally.
No, I said normally people, you have a termination date. You have a date where you have a predetermined holding period for your stock purchase. So if you buy a stock today, you hold it to like that. You want to sell it after at some point in the future. So I'm saying that's what people do naturally. But the formula is saying that you should hold to infinity, which people don't really do. So people will hold to a terminal date, a date where they will sell off the stock. Now, I'm not giving an example that imagine you buy a stock today and you hold it for what? 5 years. Does that make sense? That means in year 1, you collect dividend. In year 2, you collect dividend. In year 3, you collect dividend. In year 4, you collect dividend. In year 5, you collect dividend. Afterwards, you sell. Now, imagine that you sell right after you got your dividend. What will be your selling price? You don't know. We call that price at year 5. Ross, are you with me? Ross, are you with me? Price at year 5. Now, what is your future cash flow for this investment? Normal, you guys have done corporate finance. Normal MPV. What did you do? You paid what? POE. And you got cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and cash flow. I see what's happening. Yeah. But now we don't know this. So this is what we're trying to determine. We're trying to determine P0, the price that we should pay today. If we know in the future that we will collect D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, and price X, what will be my PO? And that's what they're saying, that this is the formula. That formula is saying that your price or your price in time 0 is equals to summation T is equals to 1 to N, dt divided by 1 plus R. You can see that it is the same. Here is infinity, here is N. Plus, remember that if I'm using this my formula, it will be what? Here will be what? 5. Yeah? While we now do Pn, P5 divided by 1 plus R raised to power what? 5. How do we determine it? The curriculum now saying that your P5, see the tricky part, your P5 is equals to dividend at DN1 divided by they didn't give us formula for okay, they are assuming that they'll give you, but that means you guys have not gotten to that. Don't let me take you far. Okay. Sorry, that's your level 2. Don't let me take you far. Okay. So basically, let's don't let me stop. So what they're saying here is that they will give you what P5 is. But you have to remember this formula. And you press your calculator. And you get the answer. Should we try an example? Should we try an example? So this is an example that is in the curriculum. Can you see the board? For the next 3 years, the annual dividends of a stock are expected to be 2 naira, 2 euro, 2.10 euro, 2.20 euro. The stock is expected to be 20 at the end of year 3. And the required rate of return is 10%. What is the value of the stock? So what they are saying here, we decrease it to 5. Here you collect 2. Here you collect 210. Here you collect 220. And at the end, it will now be what? 20. What is the value? Put this formula. And they are saying that the cost of equity is what? Is 10%. So discount this guy back here. It will be 2 divided by 0.1. Discount this guy for 2 years. It will be 2.1 divided by, sorry, this should be 1.1. Divided by 1.1 raised to power 2. Discount this guy for 3 years. This will be 2.2 divided by 1.1 raised to power 3. This guy too will be discounted for 3 years. So you can come here and say this will be plus 20. This is what I've done. Whatever you get here, plus whatever you get here, plus whatever you get here, will give you what? The price at times 0. And the curriculum said the answer to that is what? 20.23. Yeah, so that means you are going to pay 20.23. Yeah, you are going to pay 20.23 for this company right now. So in order for you to benefit, you are going to pay 20.23. It's all right. Let's move on. Any questions? Makes a lot of sense, Abi. Now, like I mentioned, some companies don't pay dividends. Some companies don't pay dividends. So how do you value them? Eh? Thank you very much. That's where we now go to something called the That's where you now go to something called the what does it call? Free cash flow. Free cash flow to the equity. Free cash flow to equity. Because they do not pay dividends, but however, they generate cash flows that are payable or should be payable to equity shareholders. So hence, you have what we have what we call free cash flow to the equity. So how do you calculate free cash flow to equity? This is the formula. This is the formula of free cash flow to equity. Your free cash flow to equity is cash flow from operations plus capital investment or capex minus capex plus net borrowing. Yeah, when your net borrowing is your borrowing minus your repayment. Yeah, that's your net borrowing. Yeah, so the expectation is that you should have borrowed more than you have paid. With this is your what? Free cash flow to equity. Now, you're going to be what the whole idea of this free cash flow to equity is that you're going to substitute wherever you have dividends, you substitute free cash flow to equity. Yeah, and you get the free cash flow over your what? Your expected investment period. Yeah, so it's the same formula. Wherever you have dividends, substitute it for what? free cash flow to equity. And with this, we are done with the what? With the present value, your discounted cash flow formula. Now, your discounted cash flow model. But there's another thing again that is important. Your rate of return that you're going to use. Remember that the formula here says your dividend at T divided by 1 plus R raised to T. Now, what is R? R, they're now saying that we should make use of something called what? The CAPM formula. And the CAPM formula is equals to the formula is equals to the current expected risk-free rate of return plus beta into bracket your equity risk premium, where your equity risk premium is the return on the market minus, so your CAPM formula is, let me just write the CAPM formula here. So CAPM formula is your risk free plus your beta into bracket, return on market minus risk free. This is what they are saying you should use for your R. That's what they are saying you should use for your R. Use your CAPM formula. Yeah. So right. Now, how do you value preferred stock? How do you value preferred stock? It's a very simple, straightforward formula for you to value preferred stock. And that formula is that the value that you're going to pay is equals to, remember that for preferred stock, it's the same dividend you collect every year. It's the same dividend you collect every year in, year out, doesn't change. And you can technically take that to be what? An annuity. Every year I'm collecting 10 naira, 10 naira, 10 naira. So it's an annuity. So what is the present value of an annuity? Present value of annuity is what? Your annuity divided by your discount rate. So in this case, the value of a preferred stock is your dividend divided by what? Your R. That's the present value or the intrinsic value of a preferred stock. Nothing more, nothing less. That will determine how much you're going to pay today. If it is a callable for a non-callable, non-convertible preferred stock with a maturity at time N, meaning that there's a maturity date for that preferred stock, then you revert to that formula that I've used before. But in this case, your dividends that you're paying, you're getting every year will be the same. Okay. Now, there's something we call the Gordon's growth model. Gordon's growth model. That first model does not take into cognizance of the company's growth. Most times, that first model that we use it for companies that are in their work, that are in their mature stage. It's not all companies that are going to be in their mature stage. A company that you believe that the company is growing at a level now. So, do you guys understand what they call? Have you guys heard of life cycle of the company? The life cycle of companies like this. So, if a company is at a growth stage, whereby by the time it gets to a mature stage, the growth at the mature stage will be different from the growth at the growth stage. You are getting my point? Then you have to what? You have to consider growth. Yeah? You have to consider growth. Also, if the company also tells you that its growth, its dividend will grow at a rate, rather than telling you what the specific growth is, or telling you what the specific, you know, the former way you gave you the dividend against giving you the actual dividend. I tell you that your dividend is going to grow at X percentage year on year. Then you can use the Gordon's growth model. And the Gordon's growth model gives you this formula. yeah, gives you this formula. Yeah, that the value of your investment is equals to D1 divided by R minus G, or D0 into bracket 1 plus G divided by R minus G, where your G is equals to your ROE multiplied by your retention rate. Your retention rate, that is your growth. Your ROE multiplied by your retention rate. Yeah. So basically, if there's growth in the company and you are holding that investment to infinity, meaning that you don't have a maturity date, you don't have a termination date, you are holding it to maturity. That's the formula that you're going to use. The formula that you have to use. Where your D0 is equals to 1 plus G divided and D0 into bracket 1 plus G divided by R minus G. If you are holding that investment to maturity. Yeah, where your G is equals to your retention rate multiplied by your return on equity. Yeah, just as you have it on the screen and you have it on the board. It's all right. One assumption for you to make use of Gordon's growth model, assumptions for you to make the growth model is what? Dividend and the correct metrics for what? For value purposes. Yeah. Number 2, dividend growth rate is forever. Number 3, required rate of return is constant over time. And number 4, growth rate must be greater than what? Dividend must be greater than what? No, must be less than, sorry. Your required rate of return must be greater than growth rate. If G is greater than required rate of return, there's problem. If G is greater than, so your G must be less than required rate. Okay. Any questions? Yes, multi-stage dividend discount model. Multi-stage dividend discount model. This is the multi-stage that I was explaining here, meaning that a company is in its growth stage, is growing at a level of what? GS. And by the time it gets to the mature stage, it's growing at a rate of what? GL. Where GS is greater than what? GL. Does that make sense? Growth over short term is not forever, while growth over long term is forever. And your growth over short term will always be greater than what? Growth over long term. This is what we call a multi-stage what? Growth scenario, not a single stage growth scenario. A multi-stage growth scenario. And if you have a multi-stage growth scenario, then the formula that you have on the board comes out. Problem in it. So, problem in it. The formula says that the value of the company is equals to summation T is equals to 1 to N, D0 into bracket 1 plus GS, meaning that that is the growth during this period. Yeah? Divided by raised power T, divided by 1 plus R raised power T, plus your VN. Remember, price at, let's use price. So price at the end of the period. Remember that formula. Price at the end of the period divided by 1 plus R raised power N. Yeah? That's the formula. However, your PN is now equals to dividend at N plus 1 divided by R minus GL. So this is assuming that you held the stock during the period of what? Growth stage. So that at the end of the growth stage, so I held the stock from year to year. At the point I get here, I sell it off. Such that my price at the point of selling it off is based on what? Growth on what? Long-term growth, not short-term growth. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, this is where you now have a conundrum, whereby your DN plus 1 is equals to D0 into bracket 1 plus GS raised to power n into bracket 1 plus GN. Very long and complicated formula. Does that make sense? Very complicated formula. So it's saying that I will first determine all my dividends at this period, discount all of them to 0.0, get my price, discount it to 0.0. But in order for me, and my growth at this, the dividends will all be growing based on what? Growth in short stage. Yeah. My PN is where now the problem is. My PN will be based on what? GL. Growth in long stage. Such that the dividends would have grown based on short stage. By the time it wants to come here, it will grow at what? Long stage. Then I will now do the what? Because I am holding to infinity, I will now do R minus GL. What an interesting formula. So let us apply these two stages. Let's see if it makes sense. Yeah. Let's apply these two stages. And let's see if it's going to make sense. Let's move this guy up a bit. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at an example. The current dividend is $5. The growth is expected to be 10% a year for 3 years, and then 5% thereafter. The required rate of it is 15. Estimate the intrinsic value. Are you guys with me? So let's start with this part. Yeah. The first part is saying it's going to be what? 5%. So it's going to be 5 into bracket 1 plus 1, 1.1 divided by 1.15 plus 5% into bracket 1.1 raised power 2 divided by 1.15 raised power 2 plus 5% 1.1 raised power 2 divided by 1.15 raised power 2. Now, the issue now is that the next guy should be 1.15 raised power 2, but we don't know what that guy is. Now, in order for us to get what that guy, we need to do this. We need to do your PN is equals to your P3 rather equals to 5% into bracket 1 plus 1.1 raised power 3 multiplied by, or rather 1.05. Yeah. Everything divided by 0.15 minus 0.05. Whatever the answer you get here, you plug it into this and you calculate this, you will get your what? Your P0. You can see that it's not complicated. As long as you do the formula, it's not complicated. And which is what the curriculum has given us as the answer. To say that the answer is what exactly what I have done. So you can see here, this that I have here. So that's what they've done here. Then they calculated this long thing that I calculated, they calculated it as this, and it got 59.68. I'm sure by the time you work the numbers out, you get the answer. Yeah? So right. Let's move on. I believe that's all for dividends. That's all for discounted cash flow models. Now let's go to multiplier. Let's go to multiplier. Can I clean the board? Let's go to multipliers. Multipliers. Now, for multipliers, the term called price multiple refers to a ratio that compares a share price with some sort of monetary value, monetary flow of value to allow evaluation of the relative worth of a company's stock. Now, a typical example of what we use is either we use price to earning ratio, price to book ratio, price to sales ratio, or price to cash flow ratio. The whole idea is that if I can get the price to earning ratio, meaning the price a company, the price a shareholder or an equity investor would pay for 1 unit of earnings. And if I say that both companies are the same, then it means that their 1 unit of earnings are the same, such that the guy that is the price of the earnings that is lower is the one that would most likely be bought. So the lower the PE ratio, the most likely the cheaper the company. Yeah. And that's what price to earning multiple is just talking about. Yeah. That if I can get the price earning ratio of 2 similar companies, it means that that is the price that investors will pay for 1 unit of their earnings. Considering that those companies are similar, then it means that their 1 earnings are similar. So the one that has a lower price is the one that you most likely pay for. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to do a justification of what drives PE ratio. Yeah, we're trying to determine what drives PE ratio. That's what we have here. What drives PE ratio? And we are saying that what price PE ratio comprises of 3 things: your dividend payout ratio, which I'll call your DPO, your required rate of return, and your growth rate. And based on this formula, we can say that your PE ratio is positively related to your dividend payout ratio. Yeah, so the higher the dividend payout ratio, the higher the PE. Then it is also inversely related, negatively related to your required rate of return. Because if required rate of return is high, your PE ratio is going to decline. Then also, it is also positively related to growth. So we can say your PE ratio is positively related to your dividend payout ratio and your growth rate, and negatively related or inversely related to what? Your required rate of return. So what are we trying to do with all this information? In all honesty, what we're trying to do with this information is to tell you that if I have 2 companies, is it safe for me to just say the guy with the lower PE ratio is the one I'm going to invest in? And the curriculum is saying no. You have to justify it, meaning that you have to compare these 2 PE ratios based on the dividend payout ratio, the required rate of return, and the growth rate. So if a company is cheaper, then it means that what? The dividend payout ratio should be what? Should be less. The growth rate should be what? Should be less. And the required rate of return should be high compared to the other one. However, if any one of them is contrary, then it means that that guy is not really cheap. Let me give you an example. The PE ratio of Zenith is 10. The PE ratio of GTB is 12. All things being equal, it means that the dividend payout ratio of Zenith Bank should be lower than the dividend payout ratio of GTB. the growth rate of Zenith Bank should be lower than the growth rate of GT. Then the required rate of return of Zenith Bank should be higher than the required rate of return of what? Of GT. If any of this is contrary to what I have said, then it means that Zenith Bank is just cheap for being cheap, but not necessarily what? A better investment. So that's what this guy is trying to explain to us. Don't just pick a company because it is cheap. Justify it. Just review it, your analysis based on those 3 parameters, and tell yourself if the company is really cheap or not. Yeah. So methods of comparing and valuation based on multiples. Remember when I said multiples are based on the what? The law of what? The law of one price. The law of one price. Meaning that 2 similar entities should be valued the same way. If one is what? Less than the other, then the one that is less would most likely be considered to be what? To be undervalued. Yeah. So with that, it is easy for us to be able to determine the methods of comparables. Yeah. Now, the curriculum says that there are 2 ways to do what? 2 ways to use multiples: trend analysis or average value versus the benchmark. So if the benchmark is saying that the PE ratio is 5, you can now use that to do what? To extrapolate what the price would be given the earnings of the company. Or time series saying the average of his PE over time versus his current earnings would give you the current price. Or you have a benchmark and you say, based on that benchmark, I can compare or I can multiply my benchmark PE with the current earnings to get my price. Those are the 2 ways of making use of what? Of comparables. 2 ways of making use of comparables. Either you do average across time or average with its peers, which will become its benchmark. So you use that to multiply by the earnings, its current earnings. Yeah. Okay. So this is just an example making use of what? Making use of an example making use of multiples of Telefonica SA, the world leader in the telecom sector. Yeah, you can look at that at your own spare time. Enterprise value. Enterprise value. Enterprise value was the solution for companies that declare losses. And because they declare losses, you cannot make use of price to earning ratio. So a solution to that is that you use what we call enterprise value multiple, which is your enterprise value divided by your EBITDA. Because a company might declare losses, but your EBITDA might be positive, which is earnings before tax, depreciation, and amortization, which is more like your NUPAT. No, not NUPAT, sorry. More like your earnings, your operating profits taking in, yes, operating profits plus EBITDA, yeah, operating profits plus depreciation and amortization. Apologies for that. Yeah, so they make use of EBITDA. So what is EBITDA? Sorry, what is enterprise value? What is enterprise value? Enterprise value is most frequently determined as the market capitalization plus market capitalization of preferred stock plus market capitalization of debt minus cash. So your enterprise value is equals to market value of equity plus market value of preferred stock plus market value of the minus cash plus near cash investment. This is your enterprise value. We'll now do enterprise value divided by EBITDA. Yeah, where EBITDA is your operating profit plus depreciation and amortization. Bam. Yeah, and it's the same way we use P ratio that we make use of this enterprise value multiple. Meaning that if I want to get the enterprise value of a company at time 0, what do I do? I take the average enterprise value divided by EBITDA over time and multiply it by EBITDA at time what? At time 0 or at time t. Yeah, that is how you forecast that. Or you do enterprise value at time t equals to the average enterprise value and EBITDA across peer group companies, the average of it multiplied by the EBITDA of the company at time t. So these are the two ways you can make use of what. It's the same way you make use of enterprise value. Oh, sorry, price to earning multiples too. Same logic, nothing too complicated. It's all right. We're almost at the end. Or rather, we're even at the end. The last method is the asset-based valuation. Asset-based valuation. In some quarters, some people still believe that a company is based on what? Some people still believe that a company is based on what? This company is based on the asset that it owns. All those future cash flow. At a point of liquidation, who is talking about future cash flow? So why don't you value a company based on the value that that company would derive if the company is liquidated at time t? Yeah, so I will pay for that company, assuming that that company is getting liquidated at time t. And how do I determine the value of the company based on this methodology? Is by what? Identifying all the assets of the company and doing what? Determining the market value of those assets. Meaning that if I decide to sell those assets today, what would I generate? Then you subtract all forms of liability, and whatever you have is the what? Is the value of that company. Is the value of that company. Yeah. The biggest issue with this methodology is what? What if the company has majorly intangible assets? Assets that you cannot, that are intangible. You cannot feel or determine, like goodwill. How would you value a company's goodwill? So that is the biggest problem with this methodology. Another thing again about this methodology is if you are in an hyperinflationary environment, you'll be shooting yourself with the leg, because hence the current market value of those items is what? Off the roof. Hence shooting up the what? Exaggerating the value of the company. So those are the two things you need to consider. But it is the easiest way of valuing a company. Easiest way. Identify the asset that he owns, determine the market value of the assets in a situation where they decide to sell off that value, eliminate all forms of what? Liability, and whatever you have left is the value of the company. With these points, I believe I have come to the end of this reading. Remember, I told you that I don't plan to take so much of your time today. And with these few points, I can say that we have come to the end of equity. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you for all your time teaching you equity.